Thank you. The most famous diaspora correspondent in history was probably a Jew by the name of Benjamin. Our medieval friend hailed from the small town of Tudela in Navarre in modern-day Spain, or as we're supposed to call it now, occupied Al-Andalus. His name might ring a bell because of the street that bears his name and winds past with breathtaking views of the sunset over Jerusalem, the same Jerusalem that he visited in the 12th century, then under Crusader rule. Our roaming diaspora correspondent was, of course, Benjamin of Tudela in English, or Binyamin Metudela in Wales. This wandering Jew with contacts across the diaspora reported from every major city in the known world, because a millennium after the exile, every major city in the world had a population of Jews. He set out to explore the corners of the world on a 13-year assignment away from home. Elad, still 2 more years to break his record. And he reported in Hebrew, the lingua franca of the Jewish world. It's thanks to Benjamin of Tudela's vivid dispatches that we know colorful details about the 40,000 Jews of Baghdad and the tiny Jewish community of Corfu, population 1. He had a keen eye for stories of color, the handsome young rabbi who worked for the Pope, the Jewish bandits of the mountains of Thessaly. He even got himself embedded with the Exilarch, the horseback leader of the Jews under Islam. He reported on internal communal rifts, the rabbinic and Karaite Jews of Constantinople, oppressed alike, but they separated themselves with a fence. The heretics of Cyprus, excommunicated by their neighbors. He even got the scoop on the messianic cult around the fake messiah, David al-Roi. Together with Ibrahim ibn Yaqub of Tortosa and Petachia of Regensburg and so many others, these medieval diaspora correspondents kept the Jewish world updated about itself in real time. They gathered up the facts, the concatenation of challenges, the cacophony of eccentric customs, and told a coherent story about a scattered global nation, dwelling alone, dwelling together, a force to be reckoned among the nations. Benjamin of Tudela was in many senses the Elad Simchayov and Canaan Lidor of his day, reporting on Jewish communities far, far away, somewhere over the Sambation, or as tonight's special award winner Ilanit would say, Eisham. I mentioned Benjamin of Tudela because we Israelis so easily fall into the trap of thinking that nothing very much happened between the Tanakh and the Palmach, but a long trail of tears, 2,000 years of suffering and servitude, until we could finally return to our homeland and fulfill our historical destiny of fighting amongst ourselves. Instead, a tradition of Jewish world reporters revealed a vibrant and interconnected global Jewish community. But this is not a history lecture, and tonight's awards are being given in the shadow of a war in Gaza. So what lies at the intersection of Binyamin Metudela and Gaza, apart from a nice ice cream shop for whoever didn't get the joke? The Jewish people are a global nation, and the solutions to our challenges must be global, because the state of Israel and the Jewish people are under attack on 8 different fronts. From the death squads of Gaza, the terrorists of Judea and Samaria, the Houthi pirates of Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iranian militias in Iraq and Syria, the Islamic regime in Iran itself, and in the diaspora itself. That is the 8th front of this war. October 7th triggered a regional war which has become, in every sense, a global war on the Jews. I wish this were not the case, but it is, as we see from the reporting of our modern-day Benjamins of Tudela. A war in which the pillars of the post-war order, large parts of the international media, whole swathes of elite institutions have been weaponized against the Jews and their state, in which the watchdogs have become attack dogs, used to launder the terrorist propaganda, to advance their annihilationist goals, to give an international seal of approval to efforts to render the Jews powerless once more. And nowhere was this more shocking than in the decision on Friday by the International Court of the Perversion of Justice, which was widely interpreted as an order to create a safe zone for terrorists in Gaza, where they could continue to rape hostages with impunity. A decision based on statements by UN functionaries in league with Hamas or otherwise complicit that simply do not correspond with reality. Statements repeated and amplified by human rights organizations that are active combatants in the information war against us, echoed by international media outlets that at best fail to give Israel a fair shake. And this information war is existential, because our global nation cannot afford to live in a world in which the allegations currently being hurled against the Jewish state become the baseline of general knowledge, in which people genuinely believe that Israel is committing genocide, or starving the Palestinians, or operating a fascist apartheid white settler colony, or whatever it is. Because a world in which Israel becomes the ultimate symbol of evil, as so many are trying to paint it, it's not a world in which there can be any safe foothold for our global nation, neither here in Israel nor across the diaspora. Because facts beget narrative, narrative begets legitimacy. Legitimacy begets the material, moral, diplomatic, and military support that we need to keep ourselves safe as we build our national home against 8 hostile frontiers. Israel is losing the information war. We are being pummeled. But we do not have the luxury of losing this war, and even if we can't win, at least not yet, we cannot afford not to fight it. For as the ethics of the fathers teach us, lo alecha hamelacha ligmor, velo ata ben chorin levatel mimena. It's not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it. Much ink has been spilled about how the international media has wronged Israel in this war. The breathless reporting of the fake airstrike on the Al-Ahli hospital and numerous other fabricated atrocities, the knee-jerk regurgitation of figures from the same terrorist army that butchered and abducted civilians on October 7th and has spent every day since then denying it while also promising to repeat it again and again. The lazy and uncritical acceptance of statements by UN employees despite incontrovertible evidence of how they are covering up for Hamas, and despite the facts proving them wrong. But this address is not a jaded Jeremiad. Israel exists so we can stop complaining about the hostility against us and organize properly as a sovereign state intimately embedded in a global diaspora to rebuff, repel, and ultimately repair those problems. So tonight, as B'nai B'rith honors our modern-day Benjamins of Tudela, reporting on our global Jewish nation, I want to lay out a vision for how that global Jewish nation holds the keys for a fight back that is long overdue. The fact that I, as a former anti-government protester, found myself the international voice of this government for the first 6 months of the October 7th war is the most comical illustration of how farcically unprepared Israel was to fight this war. But it doesn't have to be like this. We can and we must do better, and here is how. First, the government of Israel needs an elite team of spokespeople in every language and in every time zone. The government needs official spokespeople, professional, full-time, paid spokespeople in English, French, Spanish, Arabic, Russian, Portuguese, German, Chinese, and as far as I'm concerned, Swedish and Swahili as well. Able to go on TV or radio anywhere from Argentina to Australia, whatever the time is in Jerusalem, and able to speak with the authority of Jerusalem. It's inconceivable that CNN might not be able to get an official spokesman on air at 8 p.m. Eastern Time because it's 3 a.m. here, and it cannot be that South American channels cannot bring an official Israeli voice unless they pay for a simultaneous translator. We need a sayeret, a special forces unit, able to spring into action at a moment's notice anywhere in the world, properly armed with the ammunition, backup, and defensive gear they need. The critical facts, the snappy sound bites and legal slam dunks, one-line zingers and one-ton truth bombs. Social media assistants to cut their clips and grow their brands, bookers to actively reach out to producers, fact-checkers and legal advisors to brief them as they set out to battle. Now that should not be too hard for a global polyglot nation built by immigrants from every continent on earth. Katanalinu. We can find these people among the incredible Olim community in Israel or even across the diaspora, and if we can't find them, we can train them, arm them and polish them. If we can take kids fresh out of high school and turn them into elite warriors, we can take kids fresh out of college and turn them into elite spokespeople. Now, building an elite team of global spokespeople may mean rethinking the model of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It makes no sense to take the cultural attaché in New Delhi and make them the spokesperson in Paris as a stopgap to being the deputy ambassador in Argentina. That's no way to build up and accumulate or make the best use of people's language and communication skills. You don't exercise a muscle by rotating it, you put it under strain, time and time again until it is strong. Our spokespeople need to understand the local conversation, but they don't always need to be in the country they're speaking to. All interviews now take place on Zoom. Build a production line, streamline it. Israel is the only country in the world required to defend itself in the court of global public opinion around the clock. It isn't fair, it isn't right, it isn't just, but it is what it is. If Norway just decided to reward Hamas for burning Jewish families alive because it actually believes that recognizing a non-existent Palestinian state in response to October 7th is a move against Hamas, then we have to take a share of the responsibility for not even trying to speak to the Norwegian public in Norwegian. And while we're at it, we have to start cultivating the next generation of spokespeople. That means fostering high school debate clubs. Israeli universities, by the way, are world champions at competitive debating, taking seriously civics and the humanities, teaching young people to think critically and speak eloquently and argue logically. An elite team of government spokespeople in every language and every time zone. Second, Israel needs to run its international public diplomacy as a crisis communications war room. It cannot play second fiddle to an underfunded, understaffed department in the Prime Minister's office that caters mainly for a domestic audience. We need to think globally at a national scale. It means monitoring every word about Israel, every report and every interview, and responding immediately, demanding an on-air statement. You know who's very good at doing that? The Prime Minister's office, because there isn't a single report about the Prime Minister at which there isn't a statement at the end of the report. It means scanning every word in the print media and demanding an in-print retraction. It means hiring researchers and fact-checkers to brief our elite unit of multilingual spokesmen. It means being proactive in campaigns and thinking ahead and wargaming different scenarios for how we're going to react if events go one way or another. And it means hiring someone of the caliber of Jonathan Conricus or Peter Lerner, who've done such amazing work in Dover Tzahal, who understand how this works in the military and can scale it up on a national civilian level. A crisis communications war room would put out the fires we don't want to spread and push the messages we want to spread like wildfire. It would leave no battle unmanned, no shot across the bow unanswered. None of this is happening right now outside the military, and we simply cannot afford to go on like this. And that brings me to the third and perhaps most important point, and straight back to our wandering Jew from Tudela. This war for Israel's international standing is global, and we can only win it as a global people. The diaspora is not an afterthought. It is a force multiplier. Israel is a democratic nation state, yes, but the task of sustaining it must be a partnership between the Jews who dwell in Zion and the Jews beyond it, just as in the Declaration of Independence we call on Jews around the diaspora to be partners in the building of Zion. We need the diaspora to man the barricades because their fight, our fight is their fight. And there is no way that Israel sinks while diaspora communities somehow swim. But the most important thing Israel can do is not necessarily to feed them information or talking points. It's to strengthen that sense of partnership. That sense of partnership in something truly great and wondrous, that sense of shared destiny and purpose. Israel's secret power is its ability to inspire pride in diaspora Jews, to make their eyes sparkle or water at the thought of what we Jews are capable of doing when we join forces and put our minds to it and stare down the forces of adversity. Israel is our national home, and it must feel like their home away from home, where we accommodate and respect the diverse forces of Judaism around the diaspora, even if that pluralism is less popular at home. Yes, including on issues of conversion and marriage and prayer at the Kotel, where we are connected to the diaspora through bonds of friendship and correspondence. Why should every Israeli school not be twinned with a Jewish school in the diaspora, and the children given half an hour each week to FaceTime on their own devices with their buddies across the sea and catch up? Why not? But more importantly, we must hold our leaders to account for every vulgar statement, every extremist outburst designed to scrape a few more votes off the bottom of the barrel, which only make diaspora Jews recoil and want nothing to do with this place. Because not only does this ugly rhetoric not reflect who we are, it also gives ammunition to our enemies. And in this, it is a strategic, if not criminal, blow to the fight for Israel's global standing. We must not make it difficult, more difficult than it has to be, for our supporters to support us, because they're the ones we want protesting in the streets, phoning into radio stations, having difficult conversations with friends and colleagues, and when conditions are so hostile and the noose tightening ever tighter, we must make that fight as easy as we can for them. Our leaders must act responsibly and draw closer our global community instead of pushing the Jews of Jerusalem and Babylon ever further apart. An elite fleet of spokespeople, a crisis communications war room, closer ties with the diaspora, 3 steps to fight for our global nation on the hostile frontier of the war for its legitimacy. After the October 7th massacre, in the most tragic and surreal of circumstances, I found myself an international spokesman for Israel. I went into battle with an incredible team of volunteers, of Olim here in Israel, and with volunteer diaspora reinforcements. Together we realized that in a fight for our lives, we could not afford to play by the rules of the game. We had to reinvent what it meant to be a spokesperson, particularly in Israel, but also around the world. We set up daily White House-style press conferences that got picked up live by BBC and Sky News. We shifted from spokespeople to content creators, newsjacking TikTok trends to make serious points through entertaining content. We shifted from spokespeople to commentators, tweeting furiously until a quote made the New York Times. We shifted from spokespeople to media personalities, setting up the State of a Nation podcast, amplifying the voices of allies of Israel, and what I'm working on right now in the creation of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office is the creation of a civil society team of spokespeople who will continue to brief the diaspora and supporters around the world and equip them with the facts and sound bites and ammunition they need to fight for us. Our team of volunteers, conscripted in an emergency, reinvented the field of government comms, and that's the spirit in which Israel must now proceed. Tapping into the powers of the Ole community and our global diaspora, the world that tonight's worthy honorees, Elad Simchayov, Knan Lidor, have covered with such panache, and the world with which Ilanit is tonight receiving a special citation for fostering relations within our world family. We will get through this, but it's going to take some work. So let's get to work as a global nation. Thank you very much. Am Yisrael Chai.